We all love The Shawshank Redemption, a story of a brave man who successfully escapes from prison. But as they say, life is stranger than fiction, and sometimes reality makes even Hollywood's best look tame. Fictional escapes are thrilling, sure, but they rarely match the raw intensity of real-life stories. While many lists have already covered escapes from prisons, and even though this list has one or two that correspond with that sort, we decided to focus on other, perhaps more fascinating, true escape stories. Escapes from death, oppression, and hunger. So join us as we take a look at the 15 most shocking real-life escape stories that will leave you in awe and make you believe that sometimes the will to survive is the most powerful force of all. Number 15. Airborne Stowaway. In June 1969, 18-year-old Armando Socarrás Ramirez made a desperate move for freedom. With nothing but a dream and raw courage, he sprinted toward a DC-8 plane as it was preparing for takeoff in Havana, Cuba. His destination, the United States. His method, the most dangerous gamble possible, climbing onto the landing gear and squeezing into the cramped compartment. Statistically, stowaways in wheel wells don't survive. The brutal combination of thin air, freezing temperatures, and the crushing force of retracted landing gear claims most lives. But Ramirez defied the odds. For 8 hours, he endured the unthinkable. Temperatures plummeting to -40 degrees Fahrenheit and oxygen levels so low most would lose consciousness in minutes. When the plane landed in Madrid for a layover, stunned crew members found his motionless body. Rushed to a hospital, he was expected to die, but miraculously, he made a full recovery. Experts believe his body went into a state of hibernation, saving his life. Against all logic, he lived and found his freedom. Number 14. Napoleon's Escape from Elba. By 1814, Napoleon Bonaparte's legendary military career had come to a humiliating halt. Once the ruler of Europe, he was now exiled to the tiny island of Elba, stripped of power but not of ambition. Though watched closely, he was given some freedoms, receiving letters, newspapers, and even a small personal guard. But Napoleon wasn't a man to sit idly by. For 9 months, he observed. He saw France growing restless under the restored monarchy. He knew the people still saw him as their leader. And so, under the cover of darkness in February 1815, he set his plan in motion. With around 1,000 loyal men, he sailed away from Elba, landing on the southern coast of France. What followed was one of the most stunning political and military comebacks in history. Rather than arresting him, troops sent to capture him joined his side. Within weeks, he marched into Paris, reclaiming the throne without a single battle. Napoleon's exile lasted less than a year. His legend, forever. Number 13. Escape from Slavery. Harriet Tubman wasn't supposed to be a hero. She was born into slavery in Maryland, her body bearing the scars of brutal whippings. A head injury, the result of a furious overseer's thrown weight, left her with lifelong seizures and powerful visions she believed were messages from God. When her master died in 1849, she saw her chance. Instead of waiting for her fate to be decided, she ran. The first time, she was caught and convinced to return. The second time, she didn't look back. Using the Underground Railroad, a network of secret routes and safe houses, she navigated her way to Philadelphia. But freedom wasn't enough. Determined to save others, she became a conductor on the Underground Railroad, returning again and again, leading dozens of slaves to safety under the cover of night. People called her Moses because she never lost a single one of her passengers. When the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850 made the U.S. even more dangerous for runaways, she simply led them further north to Canada, where slavery was outlawed. Number 12. Saved by Wallpaper. Martin Kaler had survived the Korean War, only to fall into enemy hands on his way home. His convoy, unaware of a looming ambush, was ripped apart by gunfire in the middle of a snow-covered pass. Wounded and captured, he and his fellow soldiers were force-marched through bitter, icy terrain for 11 grueling days. Their captors, the Chinese army, weren't just imprisoning them, they were breaking them down mentally. Indoctrination sessions became their daily reality. The U.S. is the aggressor, they were told. Imperialism is your enemy. But as the weeks dragged into months, the prisoners realized the hard truth. They weren't being prepped for release. They were prisoners for life. Desperation set in, and the 19 Marines decided to risk it all. They escaped under the cover of darkness, wading through the freezing Imjin River before stumbling upon an abandoned house. The peeling wallpaper caught their eye, not just because they hadn't seen wallpaper in years, but because it would become their salvation. Using strips of it, they spelled out POW-19 Rescue in a nearby rice paddy. By some miracle, an observer plane spotted the message. Soon after, the men were rescued. Well, it was a shocking escape. Number 11. The PT-109 Incident. On the night of August 1st, 1943, in the treacherous waters of Blackett Strait, John F. Kennedy's patrol boat, PT-109, was on the hunt for Japanese ships. What the crew didn't anticipate was a sudden collision with a Japanese destroyer that sliced their vessel in half. Flames engulfed the wreckage, and the 11 surviving men clung to floating debris in the pitch-black water. With no hope of immediate rescue and enemy bases nearby, Kennedy, despite a back injury, took charge. Grabbing a life jacket strap in his teeth, he swam for hours, towing a badly burned crew member to the nearest landmass, Plum Pudding Island. The island was tiny, with no food or water, so Kennedy swam another 4 kilometers in search of help. For 6 days, the crew survived on sheer determination. Finally, native islanders helped relay a message to the Allies via a coconut shell carved with their coordinates. The crew was rescued, and Kennedy's leadership during the crisis set the stage for his political rise, eventually leading to the White House. Number 10. Chilean mining accident. On August 5, 2010, in Chile's Atacama Desert, 33 miners went to work deep underground, unaware that they were about to make history. A sudden cave-in sealed them 2,300 feet, 700 meters, below the surface, trapping them in darkness. The initial panic gave way to grim reality. No way out, limited food, and no guarantee that anyone would find them. For 14 days, rescuers drilled frantically, unsure if the miners were alive. Then, a breakthrough. A drill reached their chamber, and attached to it was a note. Estamos bien en el refugio, los 33. We are well in the shelter, the 33. The world watched as supplies were sent through narrow tubes while engineers devised a plan to bring them up. Using a specially designed rescue capsule, the miners were pulled up one by one after 69 days underground. Their survival was nothing short of a miracle. Number 9. The empty mass grave. During World War II, the town of Differdange, Luxembourg, found itself caught in the chaos of the German occupation. After a French bombing raid, the Germans turned their suspicion on 18 local firemen and one woman who had stayed behind to assist. What started as civil interactions with the occupiers soon turned into a nightmare. Believing one of the firemen had signaled the French attack, the German lieutenant in charge ordered their execution. Marched to a mass grave, the prisoners knew they were about to die. But fate had other plans. Their new overseer, Corporal Johann Punzel, wasn't convinced of their guilt. As the firemen pleaded for their lives, Punzel decided to investigate further. Realizing they were innocent, he took a massive risk. He arranged their escape using a transport truck. As the regiment moved, The chaos allowed the prisoners to slip away unnoticed. Punzel refused their jewelry as thanks, knowing that his own survival depended on not drawing attention. In the fog of war, the incident was forgotten, and 19 lives were saved by one man's courage. Number 8. Crawling towards freedom. The Becker House stood right on the dividing line between East and West Berlin, a symbol of unity before the Berlin Wall turned it into a prison. Clara Becker, a widowed mother of 6, had built a home filled with warmth, laughter, and the neighborhood's youth. But when the wall went up, everything changed. Life in East Berlin became suffocating. Ration lines stretched endlessly, police patrols tightened, and whispers of failed escape attempts turned into cautionary tales of those who simply vanished. The Beckers knew they had to act before it was too late. After an almost disastrous first attempt, they chose the most daring method possible: digging their way out. Working in shifts, 2 at a time, armed with nothing but hammers, shovels, and pickaxes, they clawed their way through the basement wall. The dirt, disposed of in an old well. Each day, the risk of cave-ins, discovery, and execution loomed over them. Finally, on January 24, 1962, 28 people crawled through their hand-carved tunnel, emerging into West Berlin and into freedom. Number 7. A lifeline called Comet. As a young girl, Countess André de Jong idolized Edith Cavell, the British nurse executed for helping soldiers escape German-occupied Belgium during World War I. Little did she know she would one day surpass her heroine's legacy. By the time she was 21, de Jong had created one of the most daring escape networks of World War II, the Comet Line. Its mission? To smuggle Allied soldiers and airmen out of Nazi-occupied territories, guiding them to safety through a web of safe houses, underground operatives, and treacherous mountain crossings. The journey wasn't easy. Starting in Brussels, the escapees were given false papers and shuffled between secret locations before making the perilous trek over the Pyrenees into Spain. It was a route fraught with danger, but de Jong personally led 118 airmen to freedom, her resolve unwavering even when captured by the Gestapo in 1943. Despite imprisonment, she never betrayed the Comet Line. Number 6. Second time's the charm. Henri-Honoré Giraud knew captivity all too well. The French general had been taken prisoner once before during World War I, only to escape and return to battle. So, when he was captured again in 1940 during the German invasion of France, he wasn't planning on staying locked up. At 61, most would have accepted their fate. Not Giraud. Held in Königstein Castle, a high-security POW prison built atop a fortress-like mountain, he spent 2 years meticulously planning his escape. He learned German, memorized maps, and arranged for supplies to be smuggled to him. Piece by piece, he fashioned a rope from copper wire and cloth. Then, one night in April 1942, he made his move. He scaled down the fortress's sheer rock face and disappeared into the wilderness. Evading capture, he navigated his way back to occupied France, where he was secretly extracted to Britain. All right, guys, now, let's head over to Number 5. Colditz. Colditz Castle is legendary for its escape attempts, with only about 15 successful breakouts despite numerous tries. The most famous escape was by Pat Reed and Harry Neve, with Neve's daring move standing out. He marched right out of the prison disguised as a German officer. Another remarkable attempt was made by Bill Goldfinch and Jack Best. Their plan? Build a glider from scavenged wood and steel and launch it off the roof. They worked in secret, crafting a working frame, but before they could attempt their flight, Colditz was liberated by Allied forces. The castle, once seen as inescapable, became a symbol of resilience. Its many breakouts and creative escape plans cemented its place in history as one of the most notorious POW camps of World War II. Number 4. The Great Escape. The Great Escape is one of the most famous prison breakouts in history, even inspiring a movie of the same name. Led by Roger Bushell in 1943, the plan was ambitious. Dig not one but 3 tunnels, nicknamed Tom, Dick, and Harry, to maximize the chances of success. It took 5 months of digging, and Harry was the first tunnel to be completed. However, it fell short of the planned exit point, making the escape riskier. 76 prisoners managed to crawl through before the tunnel was discovered. While some initially got away, most were recaptured. Tragically, 50 of them were executed by order of Hitler. Though only 3 men successfully escaped to freedom, the story became legendary, highlighting the determination and courage of POWs. Number 3. Alcatraz. Alcatraz was one of the most secure prisons in the U.S., believed to be impossible to escape from. Yet in 1962, Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers proved otherwise. Using homemade tools, they carefully chipped away at the walls around the air vents in their cells, covering the holes with cardboard. To avoid suspicion, they created fake heads out of soap, paint, and real hair to fool the guards during bed checks. On the night of June 11th, they crawled through the vents, climbed to the roof, and slid down a drain pipe to the shore. From there, they used a makeshift raft made of raincoats to set off into the freezing waters. Officials believe they drowned, but theories persist that they made it to safety. Their bodies were never found. Number 2. The Maze Breakout. Unlike other prison escapes, where the prisoners tried to escape as quietly as possible, the Maze Breakout was filled with action and drama. In 1983, some 38 prisoners escaped from one of the most escape-proof prisons in Europe. The prisoners escaped with the help of smuggled guns. They killed 1 guard and injured several others, and later escaped in a van delivering food. Well, after hearing this, the question that arises in our mind is how they were able to smuggle guns and escape so easily. In simple words, no one knows except from these dudes. Number 1. Pascal Paillet. Pascal Paillet wasn't just a high-profile prisoner. He was a man who turned prison breaks into an art form. In 1997, he took part in a deadly armored truck robbery in France. By 2001, he had pulled off his first escape in the most cinematic way possible, via a hijacked helicopter. Not content with just his own freedom, in 2003, he orchestrated another daring escape, this time for 3 of his fellow inmates, using yet another hijacked helicopter. Authorities cracked down, giving him a 30-year sentence for murder and additional time for his 2 jailbreaks. He became one of France's most closely monitored prisoners, transferred constantly to prevent another escape. But even that wasn't enough. In 2007, a team of masked men hijacked a 3rd helicopter and broke Paillet out of a prison in Grasse. 2 months later, he was recaptured in Spain. His current whereabouts remain a state secret. If you find this video interesting, please like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you soon in the next one.